Good morning to you, sir. Thank you so much for your time.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
When we talk about money matters in the past year, one of the big topics that come to mind is that Employment Tax Incentive Act, which was signed, I believe, in December. It becomes effective on the first 2 days ago, if I'm not mistaken. You can correct me on that one. It's a big talking point, but how will the Youth Fund impact South Africa's youngsters?
I think one of the biggest challenges, of course, in South Africa is the level of unemployment when compared to our peers such as Brazil, Malaysia, Mexico, that we've got the highest level of unemployment. But with us, what is stuck is the level of youth unemployment. And what the youth wage subsidy is trying to address is to try and bring the youth, because one of the reasons why the youth doesn't have access to labor market opportunities is because most of us cite experience. We said want experience. Secondly, we also want to see if they've got a track record of doing any other work to the skill they've acquired. And most of them are short of that. So the youth wage subsidy is really to try and address those by giving employers a package that will enable them to employ these young men and women to have experience and gain some skills, in the process becoming much more easily employable in the future. This is not a panacea for our problem. It's just a stopgap measure to really bring some of the youth into employment. The view that should our economic fortune change, that youth can then have had acquired experience and be employable.
But that incentive is not without controversy, though. Many people criticizing it, saying that it will cost the older generation or those who are older from maintaining their jobs or even finding jobs. So are we sacrificing that generation just to try and bring in the youth? And if so, is that sustainable?
Well, in fact, this is really a very poor intervention. What we could be doing, I think the boldness that our government should have done is to address our Labour Relations Act, because that's the main source of our problem, that it remains completely unflexible. So really for interest groups to be crying around a youth wage subsidy, we're going to create at least, at best, about 200,000 jobs over the next 3 years, because this is just a pilot. We're trying to see in the next 3 years how much impact it's going to have, what's the acceptance rate going to be. So in 3 years' time, we'll do an evaluation to see what we've done, what we've gained, and then thereafter. So really the criticism, I think, for me, is really the bigger issue in South Africa is labour market inflexibility, and how does South Africa become an attractive place for industries to come here with a very friendly labour market environment.
The youth in South Africa, many of them have become despondent as they struggle to be active participants in the economy. Should we perhaps be focusing more on entrepreneurship and maybe pushing that agenda, do you think?
Well, this is a broader policy issue, because remember that, this issue that we're talking about is a smaller issue in a bigger problem. The bigger problem in South Africa is that in our post-1994 economic strategy, we focus more on redistribution. That is the grant system, where we've got over 15 million people benefiting, amongst others. So we have sacrificed growth for redistribution. The real problem is how can South Africa grow above 5% per annum consistently up to 2030, as our National Development Plan articulates. And that's where the problem is, because it's only through employment where we'll be able to end poverty and hopefully start talking about how do we then address inequality, because poverty and inequality are different challenges. So we need first to really create jobs and then address poverty. And then the tools or instrument of addressing inequality are much bigger. They talk to freezing wages at the highest level, at high skill levels of CEOs, etc., which I think South Africa is not yet ready to engage in, given the fact that we've got a skill problem as a country.
Now, I'm going to ask you to look into your imaginary crystal ball and try and see what 2014 may have in store for us as far as the economy is concerned. We know Minister Pravin Gordhan expected to release his new budget in no time. What do you think he'll have to say? What do you predict?
It's very, very tough, because he's caught up between a rock and a hard place. Remember that, in Gauteng, earlier you're talking about the e-tolls. We're talking about school fees now that are coming in for those that are going to private schools. We're talking about huge fees increases, because private schools are not cheap. So thirdly, you're talking about a government that is really has seen debt increasing from about 27% during the boom periods, that's in 2006, 2007, to 40% today. So government is becoming much more difficult to have ability to spend. So most of our money that we're collecting for taxes is now going towards servicing our debt because our debt has increased so much. So Minister Prem Kordam is going to have to think at ways of how to get more money. And unfortunately, he doesn't have much to do. Therefore, that's why the growth discussion for us is so important, that how do we grow this economy? Because all our economic policies are talking across purposes. If you look at IPEP, you look at New Growth Path, you look at NDP, there's no harmony. So we need really to take a big leap by focusing on growth, because only true growth of about 5% or more, when we'll end unemployment, and hopefully then other problems can be resolved.
There we have it. Thank you so much. So consumers in South Africa really at great constraints with e-tolls in Johannesburg or Gauteng. We also know the petrol price going up, so there's a lot for us to deal with. And then on the other hand, we have officials, Minister Pravin Gordhan saying that he expects them to tighten their spending quite a bit. It remains to be seen what 2014 will have in store for us in that front. And that's what